I parked across the street instead of pulling into the driveway. The house sat there quietly, exactly as it had when I signed the papers 3 weeks earlier. A clean-lined modern build nestled into the ridge above Pinecrest Hollow, all glass and dark cedar, designed to dissolve into the landscape. I bought it for the silence, for the sense that nothing could follow me here unless I invited it. That illusion shattered the moment I saw movement behind the glass, inside my living room. Before I'd even slept a single night there, stood my mother Elaine and my cousin Maribel. Not waiting, not calling, not knocking. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment like this. Your like and share can carry this story to someone who needs hope, healing, or strength today. Red heart. Elaine held a clipboard against her chest. Maribel had her phone raised, slowly panning across the kitchen like she was filming a walkthrough. They weren't visiting. They were surveying. I cut the engine and stayed perfectly still. No horn. No door slam. No dramatic confrontation. That would have been instinct. And instinct had kept me manageable for years. Instead, I reversed slowly, rolled 2 houses down, and parked beneath a maple tree heavy with leaves. My hands were steady as I opened the security app I'd installed the week after closing. The one I never thought I'd actually need. The camera feed, loaded. Elaine moved through the house with proprietary confidence, opening cabinets, tapping the island countertop with her fingernail like she was testing stone quality. Maribel followed, nodding, occasionally pointing toward the back hallway. They were planning something. I didn't interrupt. I waited. Time passed differently when you stop reacting. It thickened, slowed, became leverage. They stayed for 19 minutes. When they finally left, laughing, doors closing too casually for people who didn't belong there, I waited until their car disappeared around the bend before returning. Walking into the house afterward felt like stepping into a space that had been handled, not damaged, not robbed, claimed. The air felt wrong, like perfume lingering after someone leaves without permission. I didn't call them to ask how they got in. The method didn't matter. The violation did. I placed my bag down, removed my shoes, and dialed a number I'd saved months earlier, but hoped I'd never use. "I need emergency lock replacement," I said. "Smart locks. Biometric. Tonight." Then I cleaned. Not casually. Not tidying. I wiped down surfaces they'd touched. The cabinet handle my mother favored. The edge of the counter Maribel leaned against. I mopped the floor in long, deliberate strokes, not because it was dirty, but because they had stood there. This wasn't cleaning. It was reclamation. When the locksmith finished installing the system, he handed me the admin card and stepped back politely, like someone who sensed they were witnessing the end of something. I closed the door. Click. The sound echoed through the empty space, mechanical, final, absolute. I sat on the floor in the center of the living room and waited for the adrenaline to pass. My dog, Cairo, patted over and rested his head on my knee, warm and solid. This was the silence I'd paid for. People always ask why I kept the purchase secret, why I didn't announce it, why I didn't let family be excited for me. They don't understand how my family works. In my family, ownership is theoretical. Resources belong to whoever needs them most, and need is defined by volume, not responsibility. Whoever collapses loudest gets the softest landing. For 31 years, that person was my younger brother, Evan. Evan was what Elaine called misunderstood potential, what lenders called uninsurable. He bounced between ventures, certifications, relocations, always one opportunity away from greatness, always one signature away from disaster. And too often, that signature was mine. When his credit tanked, accounts appeared under my name. When he needed temporary enrollment in a professional program, my identity made it happen. When a lease required stability, my record provided it. It was never framed as theft. It was framed as family support. I worked quietly, built slowly. I'm an environmental consultant, the kind of job where mistakes aren't theoretical. If you miscalculate drainage, the land collapses. There are consequences. I saved aggressively, hit accounts, declined vacations, redirected bonuses into places Elaine didn't know existed. The house wasn't an upgrade. It was an exit. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Elaine. So glad we finally got to see the property. It has real potential. Maribel thinks the lower level would be perfect for Evan while he repositions. I stared at the screen. Not your home. Not congratulations. The property. Another message followed. We'll come by Saturday to bring his things. We'll talk details then. There was no question mark. I didn't reply. I opened my laptop instead and pulled up every document connected to my identity. Something wasn't right. And if they felt bold enough to enter my house without asking, it meant they already believed they owned far more than just the space. They believed they owned me. I didn't respond to my mother's message that night. Silence had always unnerved her more than confrontation. Anger gave her something to argue against. Silence forced her to imagine losing control. Instead of replying, I opened a spreadsheet. That sounds cold, but it wasn't. It was survival. For years, I'd learned that nothing my family did was impulsive. Every emergency had a paper trail. Every crisis had been quietly prepared for in advance, often using my name as the safety net. If they were already talking about Evan moving in, then decisions had been made long before they stepped into my house. I logged into my credit monitoring account. There it was, a soft inquiry from a regional bank dated 2 weeks earlier, a mortgage-related verification request. Not approved, not denied, just checked. My pulse slowed instead of spiking. Comment clarity. They hadn't just walked through my home. They'd tried to position it. I pulled up the title documents, the insurance binder, the utility accounts. Everything was clean, for now. But the pattern was familiar. This was how it always started. Curiosity first, entitlement second, execution last. I slept on the floor that night, Cairo pressed against my side, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of a house that was still learning me. When morning came, the light spilled through the glass walls, soft and honest, and for a moment I almost convinced myself I'd overreacted. Then my phone rang. It was my Aunt Rosalind, Elaine's older sister, the only one in the family who ever spoke in half-truths instead of full delusions. I thought you should know, she said without greeting. Your mother's been telling people you bought a place as an investment. I closed my eyes. She's been asking about rental regulations, Rosalind continued, and whether family occupancy counts as income. There it was. They weren't asking for permission because they didn't believe permission was required. In their version of reality, I was a holding company. The house was inventory. I thanked Rosalind and hung up. Then I called my attorney. I didn't explain emotionally. I laid out facts. Unauthorized entry, identity exposure, anticipated forced occupancy. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he said one sentence that settled into my bones. They're treating your personal property like communal infrastructure. Yes, I replied, and I need that to stop. He advised documentation first, escalation later. So I documented. I saved messages, screenshots, call logs. I exported my credit report and flagged the inquiries. I photographed the new locks and uploaded timestamped footage from the security system showing Elaine and Maribel inside the house. Not as revenge, as record. That afternoon, Elaine tried again, this time through voice. She left a voicemail that started sweet and sharpened by the end. "We're just trying to help Evan get back on his feet," she said. "You always take things so personally. Families share. That's how we've always worked." She paused, then added quieter, "Don't make this difficult." I listened to it twice, not to absorb it, to study it. This wasn't about Evan needing a place to live. It was about image control, about maintaining the illusion that their golden child was still ascending, not falling. And my house, with its glass walls and clean lines, was the perfect stage set. Friday evening, Evan called. That alone was unusual. He rarely contacted me directly. Communication usually flowed through Elaine like a PR department. "Hey," he said, too casual. "Mom said you're stressed about the house thing." "I'm not stressed," I replied. "I'm clear." He chuckled. "You're always so dramatic about ownership. It's just temporary." Temporary had cost me years. "I'm not housing you," I said. There was a pause. Then the tone shifted. "You know," he said slowly, "you wouldn't even have the flexibility to buy that place if we hadn't all supported you early on." I felt something settle. Not anger, not hurt. Recognition. They genuinely believed my success was a byproduct of their generosity, not my labor. "I paid for that house," I said. "Alone?" "Yeah," he replied. "But with the family name behind you." I ended the call. Saturday morning came with a heaviness in the air, like weather about to turn. I didn't leave the house. Instead, I waited. At 9:12 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Elaine. "We're on our way. Let's just talk like adults." No question mark. At 9:27, another message. "Don't embarrass your brother." I checked the security feed. 2 cars turned onto the street. My chest stayed calm. They pulled into the driveway, like they belonged there. Elaine stepped out first, chin high, already rehearsing her authority. Evan followed, hands in his pockets, scanning the house like a buyer. They walked straight to the front door. And stopped. The handle didn't move. Elaine knocked once. Then again, harder. "Alyssa," she called, using the tone she reserved for correcting behavior. "Open the door." I didn't. Instead, I picked up my phone and sent a single email to my attorney. "They're here." Then I walked to the glass wall beside the entryway, not opening the door, just visible enough to be unmistakable. Elaine's eyes locked onto mine. Relief flashed first, then irritation. "This is ridiculous," she mouthed through the glass. I opened the door just enough to step outside, then closed it behind me. "I asked you not to come," I said calmly. "You don't get to isolate yourself from family," she snapped. "We're here to solve a problem." "You are the problem," I replied, evenly. Evan scoffed. "You're really going to do this? Over a house?" "This isn't about the house," I said. "It's about consent." Elaine laughed sharply. "Consent? You're not a tenant. You're our daughter." I held her gaze. "I'm the sole owner," I said, "and you entered without permission." Her smile faltered. Evan stepped forward. "Let's not make this legal." I nodded once. "Then leave." They didn't. They stood there, testing me, waiting for the old version of me to crack, to apologize, to compromise, to open the door wider. Instead, I reached into my bag and handed Elaine a sealed envelope. "What's this?" she demanded. "Notice," I replied. "You'll receive an official copy as well." She opened it halfway, then stopped when she saw the letterhead. Her face drained. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I already did." Evan's bravado collapsed. "This is insane." "No," I said. "This is overdue." Elaine looked up at the house, at the cameras, at the locks she no longer controlled. For the first time, she understood something fundamental had changed. And she hated me for it. But hatred was lighter than ownership. I went back inside and locked the door. Click. Behind the glass, they stood frozen, cut off not just from the house, but from the role they'd assigned me my entire life. I leaned against the wall, heart steady. This wasn't the end, but it was the moment they realized the rules had changed. The days after the Saturday showdown passed differently than anything I had ever experienced. Silence filled my house, but it wasn't the fragile quiet of anticipation. It was solid, heavy, protective. I could hear the wind through the glass walls, the creak of the floors, and Cairo's paws patting across the empty rooms. And it was all mine. Every sound, every shadow belonged to me. Elaine and Evan didn't come back immediately. Their absence wasn't a victory. It was the calm before the storm. I expected messages, calls, maybe even a confrontation at my grandfather's house. But nothing. Instead, I let the attorney handle the situation. The cease and desist notice had the intended effect. Within hours, a process server delivered official copies to Elaine and Evan. I knew the moment the envelope was opened. My phone buzzed. A short, sharp text from Elaine. "We've received it. You'll regret this." No threats, no reasoning, just fear cloaked in family entitlement. And for the first time, I realized the most powerful leverage in our dynamic wasn't anger or yelling, it was legality. It was accountability. It was the undeniable truth written on paper that my property, my space, and my boundaries were no longer optional. For a week, I documented everything. Phone calls, messages, even their sporadic social media activity. It wasn't obsession, it was preparation. A single misstep on their part could have reversed everything I built, and I wasn't going to give them that opportunity. Every invoice for locks, security systems, and attorney fees felt like a deposit into my future, a tangible investment in freedom. Then came the day of the first confrontation I hadn't anticipated. My father, usually the quiet enabler, showed up at the edge of my driveway. He stood there, looking less certain, almost human for the first time in years. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just leaned against the hood of his car, arms crossed, waiting for me to come out. I stepped onto the porch, the manila envelope in hand, not because I needed it, but because I wanted the weight of the law to be visible. "You really went this far?" he asked. His voice was tight, almost small. "Yes," I said. Calm, deliberate. "I did exactly what I had to do. You sold my inheritance. You attempted to enter my home without permission. You've been using me as a safety net for Evan for years. And I'm done." He flinched, not at the words themselves, but at the certainty behind them. I had always been quiet. I had always absorbed, accommodated, and disappeared. Now I was visible, and nothing he could say would change that. Elaine showed up minutes later, bristling, trailing Evan like a shadow. "We're your family," she hissed. "You can't just shut us out." I didn't flinch. "I'm not shutting you out," I said slowly. "I'm including myself. For the first time in my life, I'm treating my needs like they matter. You're welcome to visit, but you will follow rules that respect me and my property, or you won't enter at all. That is your choice, not mine." For a moment, she seemed speechless. Evan's defiance flickered, then vanished when he noticed the small cameras around the porch and the recorded security footage ready to be shared with authorities if needed. Then, the most unexpected thing happened. My father, still leaning on the car, whispered, You've changed." "Yes," I said. "I had to. For me." And in that moment, I understood something essential. They hadn't lost power. I had simply taken it back. The fallout was immediate and irrevocable. Without my house to shelter him, Evan was forced to confront the consequences of his decisions. He downsized into a small studio, cut ties with frivolous ventures, and for the first time in a decade, experienced accountability. My parents retreated, their authority undermined not by anger, but by my refusal to accommodate their manipulation. Friends, neighbors, and even distant relatives began whispering, not about my supposed coldness, but about the absurdity of Elaine's entitlement. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. The years I had spent minimizing myself, covering others' mistakes, and apologizing for my existence had been replaced by something far more valuable: autonomy. I furnished the house over the next few weeks. Each piece, velvet sofa, teak coffee table, reclaimed wood shelves, was a deliberate choice. I didn't just build a home. I built a sanctuary. Every object reflected my labor, my taste, and my independence. Cairo explored each corner with the cautious curiosity of one sensing a new territory fully owned and protected. I kept the legal documents in a drawer, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. I had boundaries. I had power. And most importantly, I had the right to protect both. The final message came weeks later from Elaine. A single line, almost perfunctory. "Maybe we should talk when you're ready." I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not from spite, not from cruelty, but from clarity. I wasn't ready to negotiate my independence. I was ready to live it. That night, I sat on the floor, the moonlight spilling across the teak coffee table. I held my cup of tea and breathed in the quiet. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't whole in every way. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking to make others feel bigger. I wasn't apologizing for existing. I wasn't paying for approval I would never receive. I thought about every sacrifice, every moment I'd accommodated, every choice I had to make to survive within a family that celebrated entitlement over effort. And I smiled, not because of revenge, not because of justice, but because of freedom. Freedom is heavier than anger, quieter than triumph, and deeper than resentment. It isn't vindictive. It isn't loud. It's structural. It's the solid hum of a life finally built according to your rules. And that, more than anything, became my moral. You don't have to burn bridges to protect your peace. You don't have to justify your boundaries to those who never respected you. Sometimes the bravest act is to fully claim your life and refuse to apologize for it. If this story resonates, if you've ever had to defend yourself from people who should have protected you, share your experience below. And for more stories of quiet rebellion, self-preservation, and family drama, subscribe to follow the journey. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't revenge, it's being the architect of your own life.